Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos, where industry leaders share their thoughts and experience on the future of space business, policy, and opportunity. If you like Constellations, please support us by giving a rating and review on iTunes. And don't forget to share this podcast online to help our community grow.
Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Erin Miller, Director of Business Development at the National Cybersecurity Center. You can hear the buzz in the background here. We are recording this from Utah State University at the Small Stat Show. And at Utah State, we say, go Aggies!
Aggies.
Go Aggies. Yeah, this is great. During this episode, we'll talk about the Space Information Sharing and Analysis Center, referred to as ISAC, what it is and why we need it. We will also discuss new developments and strategies to combat increasing cybersecurity and other threats to our space assets. Today, in front of the microphone, we have Erin Miller, Director of Business Development at the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs and home of the Space ISAC. Between her work at NCC and her previous experience at the Center for Technology, Research, and Commercialization, where she solved dozens of problems for the warfighter in space and cyber, Erin is well-versed in the objectives of the ISAC. So we're going to jump right in here now and ask the obvious question. So, Erin, tell us exactly what an ISAC is.
Well, John, everyone asks that. I wonder why. It's an Information Sharing and Analysis Center, and it's a public-private partnership. And it was set up actually by the White House. There's a presidential directive out there from 1998 that requires ISACs to exist to protect our critical infrastructures from threats and vulnerabilities. There's about 25 out there. So for financial services, retail, and others, hospitality, they're all over the place.
So I guess the term we can use is an ISAC can be sector-based or categorized. Is that right?
That's correct.
So we have ISACs for IT, we have ISACs for aerospace, and so now we have one for just regular old space. And so why here, why now? Why Space ISAC?
Well, I like how you call it regular old space. So why now? Well, we've obviously started evolving our market sector for space. Just being here at this conference, you can see how many companies there are, new and emerging technologies for space. And unfortunately, that brings some risk to the industry. And the federal government in the United States has come out and said that they want to protect this sector and they want to back that. So that means that we're going to have a space-dedicated ISAC. And it's the only one that will address space from a commercial and international perspective.
You know, we've been here a couple days. We see all kinds of people walking by the booth here. And I would suspect if we could peer into their little brains, they're interested in innovation and creativity and doing new and creative things. Maybe cybersecurity is not really in the top 10 list there, is it? I mean, and this is what you're talking about, and they should have it in the top 10 list. Maybe it should be one.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. And it might not be right now. And I know that's probably the perception that right now it's not about cybersecurity, it's about innovation, but we really need to build cybersecurity into our innovation. We already learned that the hard way with IT and then with cyber and now space. So, I mean, IT security is ITsec. That's the beginning of all of this. And now space is just that next layer we need to add on.
So who are the founding members or the companies that kind of precipitated the Space ISAC?
Well, we've started building our founding membership board. So we have several committed members. Lockheed Martin actually just verbally committed to us. So we're really looking forward to formalizing that partnership. We have Kratos Defense. From the government side, we have the White House, NASA, National Security Council. They actually got on stage and announced this with us at the Space Symposium in April of this year. And we have some others that have joined. Just this week, Booz Allen Hamilton announced, and we announced it in the press. At least 65 tweets have gone out on that topic.
Wow, Space Dynamics Lab, we had them as the earlier guest in the podcast here. Well, these are some big hitters here, isn't it?
Yeah, we have Space Dynamics Lab, and we have MITRE, too.
Now, I understand that the Space ISAC is housed at the National Cybersecurity Center. Tell us a bit about the NCC and how it relates to the Space ISAC.
Yeah, so the NCC, the National Cybersecurity Center in Colorado Springs, is a community member-driven organization. And we have training for executives. We do training at the K through 12 level. We also have a big annual cyber summit. It's in September on the 19th and 20th this year at the Broadmoor Hotel in Colorado Springs I highly recommend checking it out. We will have a Space ISAC panel there where we will talk about the commercial and international space assets that are being developed and how they can be used by the military.
You know, I've done interviews with people talking about debris in space and space junk, and I don't know, maybe from my simple perspective, it looks like that a lot of the vulnerabilities are space junk colliding out there, maybe interference or something. So what type of cybersecurity vulnerabilities do you see in space that you can share with us?
So space junk is, of course, an issue. We need to manage that. A lot of the cybersecurity vulnerabilities that we're going to be addressing in the ISAC relate to manufacturing, launch, payloads, communications, services. So it runs the whole gamut of the space system. And when we're looking at manufacture, we're especially looking at the vulnerabilities to the supply chain. So just one example that we've already learned about in the ISAC, we ran a secure GPS seminar for critical infrastructure and key resources just a couple months ago. And we had all of our members there. We talked about GPS and the security vulnerabilities to GPS. Do you know you can buy a jammer on the internet for like $20? I mean, this is basic stuff here.
Wow. You know, when I think about, I'm driving around Ogden, I'm lost, I get up my phone, and GPS helps me all the time. And so beyond navigation, give us an idea what GPS provides or how it helps or hurts people in small satellites.
Yeah, when we were at that seminar, then we talked about emergency services, commercial aircraft, which is an obvious one, I hope, to most of us. Energy metering is actually using GPS to track how much energy use you have in your business or your home. Financial transactions are connected to GPS, ocean liners. It actually, GPS impacts all of the critical infrastructures. There's 16 of them. So everything that we do in our daily life that's been deemed as a critical infrastructure is connected to GPS, is what it comes down to.
So you talk about the cybersecurity vulnerabilities. We talk about space assets up there. So what kind of risks do we have when we look at small sats and space assets out there?
Yeah, we're looking at, I mentioned the supply chain, so operational technology and the business systems that we have within these companies. A lot of us, especially in my previous work experience, we've had to start protecting our intellectual property of our companies, which includes your business system for your satellite. Maybe you're a supplier and you have a patent that you need to have in place. Well, there's other proprietary information, trade secrets that people can steal. So we clearly need to be protecting those things in addition to the mission. And the mission is, that technology that's out there and what's in flight, the payloads that are in flight, it can be compromised. So there's those three various aspects of threats and vulnerabilities that we'll be collecting information on. It's all anonymous, though. I have to throw that out there for you. We're not planning on disclosing that a company has been actually hacked. That's not the goal here.
When I think of supply chain, I think of buying a Cisco router that was maybe manufactured in China and or another country and having some kind of a problem with it. But supply chain can also apply to software, too. And I think the whole concept of vulnerabilities, it's cyber vulnerabilities is such large range, it's really hard to understand. Thousands of people have listened to this podcast from all over the world. They come up to us to the show and tell us so we know. So if you're listening now and want to get email alerts when new episodes are available, go to Google, type in Constellations Podcast, go to the Kratos site and give us your email address and we'll send you out a little email. And the next time we have someone like Erin in front of a microphone. Okay. Surprise, this is the part of the show where I read a quote, could be from Ben Franklin. I read a quote and you got to identify who said it. Here's the quote. Our space community needs timely, actionable information to respond to attacks. We can only do this if we work together in a high-trust information sharing environment. Who said that?
That was me. Yeah, that high-trust information sharing environment is what I am super passionate about.
You should put this on a T-shirt and get a T-shirt gun here at the conference and say, hey, before you develop that next small sat, open your eyes.
Right.
Trust is something in the Washington, D.C. area where I'm from, that is kind of a difficult proposition, and I think when you're talking about commercial organizations and federal organizations, you cross over into the military, you cross over into the intelligence community. This gets to be a very easy concept to put on paper, high concept to enact, isn't it?
Yeah, the ISACs, a lot of them have experience with this already. So we're expecting to share information with them. I mean, that's inherent to the nature of this whole thing, is that the ISACs have experience building trust in the community, and they have already learned how to do that, and the Space ISAC will do the same thing. And we hope to do it really well because we are including the entire international community as well. And that means we're going to need that trust piece so that people will participate.
So the Space ISAC, is it focused primarily on commercial space, or do you coordinate with the DoD as well, Department of Defense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We are coordinating with the DoD, and a lot of people may assume, because of all the talk about U.S. Space Command, that we're not just coordinating with them, but they're leading this. They're not actually leading it. It's a combined effort across at least 18 different government agencies to support, not through even funding, but support as a sponsor, the Space ISAC to exist. So it is a true public-private partnership where we'll have NASA, National Security Council, members from National Space Council will participate, which it covers a wide variety of agencies like Department of Commerce and others.
Well, here we are at the SmallSat conference, and you can't have big satellites or small satellites without something going on the ground. And so my question to you is, what about the Space ISAC focus? Does it focus on cybersecurity threats to ground stations as well?
Yeah, I think every fifth company, I'm going to say, that I've seen here is doing something related to the ground. They're either building the ground segment, they're doing ground as a service, or they build ground stations. I would say that physical security is a very clear aspect to that. But if you have data that's coming down through your pipe, so to speak, then you need to be concerned about security, because there's a lot that can be gleaned from that information transfer.
Yeah, I spoke those words earlier this morning. Ground station as a service. It's a relatively new phrase, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting to see how we're turning everything into a service. And the more we do that, the more security concerns we're going to have. Unfortunately, I hate to be that person. But that's just how it's going with the industry, is that as these new companies emerge, they can't just do lowest price, technically acceptable, so to speak. We really need to take into consideration that designing that cybersecurity element into it.
Well, here at the SmallSat conference, there's lots of small companies, and if I were to drag you down one of the aisles here and place you in front of a small sat company, so how would you explain to them how Space, ISAC can help them?
Well, I would say that as a small company, then you don't have a lot of resources to be able to just hire 20 different experts in cybersecurity, and because you do space does not mean that you are a cybersecurity person. Or are you completely aware of all of the threats and vulnerabilities? That's why we need to come together as a community so that we can build out that space layer security. And when the community comes together, the sharing of the information is what creates the standards. So that prevents an environment where people feel like standards are just going to come imposed upon them without them having a say in the matter. And because we have so many U.S. government entities that are involved and sponsors of this, then they're going to be listening. They want the information exchange. And they have information to share as well. That's the other reason for the creation of the Space ISAC.
I was at your website today, and the phrase space threat comes up. And 10 people, 10 different interpretations of what a space threat is. Some people think of only military threats, or congestion can be a threat too. So you monitor both?
Yeah. I mean, the congestion thing, as soon as there's some human flight happening and someone hits something in space, then yes, we're going to have some issues there. It hasn't happened yet. We don't have active human flights that are up there. But there's technology that's being developed to manage the space debris issue. I don't think that's where the ISAC is going to start. That's just my instinct about the situation. As we begin the information sharing and we have the founding board members, then our concerns are going to be more about those business systems that I talked about, and then evolving to the operational technology, as well as the mission itself.
This morning, pick up my phone, look what the weather's going to be, and my news feed, satellite launches are like front page news these days, and feeds are coming up all the time for it. I would guess with the proliferation of launches in the next few years, the congestion threat can't be too far behind. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've sat in sessions this week, and I've heard that congestion is definitely an issue. And John, I'll say it again. I don't think that is the number one concern that the ISAC's going to address.
We talked about members of the Space ISAC, some of the founding members, some pretty big name organizations. So what type of companies? I know MITRE is a nonprofit, a couple of those are profit. So what kind of companies are attracted to supporting, Space ISAC?
Yeah, we have companies from all over. As you mentioned, we have universities that are involved. So those universities that we're talking to have a lot of research and development in space. We also have UARCs, and those entities are associated with a university. We're talking to some federally funded research and development corporations. The next groups that we're going to be talking to, I think, are a lot of the small businesses and mid-sized businesses. Because as we have established our founding membership board, those companies are going to be interested in learning about the threats and vulnerabilities that are occurring in the industry so that they can prepare to respond. There's also a lot of training and resources that will be made available to them so they can take action. And when they get the information, it's all actionable information. And if you can't respond, you're not equipped, then it doesn't do much good for your business. But I can say it's going to protect your bottom line if you're willing to put in a little work to get trained from the ISAC.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect way for a growing satellite company or a small sat company to take and inexpensively, take advantage of this wealth of information that these groups provide for them and sharing. And if you can establish that trust, that would be the toughest part of the whole job, establishing trust, and then everyone can take advantage of it. I looked in your LinkedIn profile. You've got a wide background. And if you try to look in the future, so what do you think the biggest challenges are for Space ISAC in the next 4 or 5 years ahead?
So let me think about that for a second here, because I don't think that it's a technological challenge. We've got Moore's Law happening here. It's not the technology that we're concerned about. It's really about the people. The technology has to be secured, but the only way to do that is to have a cultural transformation. And with IoT, 5G, all the new constellations going up in LEO, it impacts transportation, it impacts our way of life. So I think the people, just in general, who are entrepreneurs and small business owners, as well as the larger corporations, we have to fully embrace this, and we have to come together as a community. And that's going to be our biggest hurdle, is getting that culture transformation.
And the hardest one, too, I think. The technology is almost there, but boy, human beings, that's tough. Well, Erin, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'd like to thank our guest, Erin Miller, Director of Business Development, National Cybersecurity Center.
Thanks for listening to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. If you like this interview, please subscribe, tell a friend, and give us a review.